Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Honestly, Let's Talk. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and I try to bring you another topic every week to talk about different things that are on my mind, I hear about in passing conversations, or stuff I just want to talk about. And every time I do, I bring on different guests. Just like my guest today, who is Christy Everhart. Christy, go ahead and introduce yourself before we talk about the topic.
Hi, I'm Christy Everhart. I am a 13-year veteran teacher teaching resource reading, and I'm excited to be a part of this chat.
So, over the last couple of weeks, we've talked about things from books we love to alcohol abuse to behind the smile, therapy, all kinds of stuff. And it was so interesting that, Christy, you've been watching some of the episodes and being a part. And then you were like, hey, this is something that's really close to my heart. And when you mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. I love that too. I definitely want to talk with you about reaching kids where they are.
Absolutely.
And to me, it's such an important conversation. I feel like, like I say in every episode of Honestly, Let's Talk, we're not going to have all the answers tonight. And what we may say may just work for us and may not work for you. But it is a conversation that I think as educators, we're always having of how do we meet the kids where they are to get them to be successful? So I guess the best place to start is when I say the words reaching kids where they are, like, what does that mean to you?
I think a lot of it is you've got to get to know where your kid are. Are they a higher kid who's excelling and you're boring them because you're actually keeping them behind where they could be? Are you working with some students who are several grade levels behind where you would like them to be? Are they right on track? You've got to know exactly kind of where they're at in the midst of what your curriculum is, and then kind of work around with that. And I think it works always. It works with, like I said, the kids who are excelling and eons above even where you're used to teaching. And then you're going to have those students who are, your average kiddos. And you're also going to have a lot who do enter your classroom that have kind of just been passed on to you and like, here, good luck with this. And do what you can.
You said something really interesting there, though, that I think is a piece of the conversation that is always missing. And that is when it comes to reaching kids where they are, that also means those kids who have the material mastered, who know what's going on, and they're bored with your classroom. So before we go anywhere else, I want to start with that. And so let's say I've got kids in my class who are far and above. They get it in the first 5 seconds. They don't need 20 practice problems. They're ready to go. What are some tips or strategies that you would recommend for people of really working with those types of students?
So first of all, if I was only used to what I'm teaching and I'm very good at like what I'm supposed to be teaching, but I don't know a lot about, okay, here's where you go next. I would definitely start having some conversation with my higher grade level teachers, even if that meant I have to go several grade levels above. Because I do want to challenge the kid where they're at. I was so lucky. I had one teacher, my very last year of school, who actually did this because I had taken the course over the summer. And then I came to him and I'm like, I've already done this, like legit. And it was a writing class. And I'm like, I seriously already took this. Here's my transcript. Like I passed it with an A. And he's like, all right, cool. I got you. And then he like actually gave me the second semester material beforehand. So I was getting to do all these cool projects that none of my other friends were getting to do because I'd already done it. And I respected that because that's not something that I can say about any other teachers. So it's definitely like whatever your content area is, know where the kid's going to go. If they already know it.
And something that I think a lot of us are guilty of, especially when we first start teaching, is we find those high achieving kids, those kids who master the content quickly, and we utilize them in our classroom as tutors or to help. And we think that's the best way. Like they've already got it. Let's use them to help their peers. And for some of the kids, they enjoy that for a little while. But I remember sitting down and talking with some of my high achieving kids when I was really trying to figure out what the best way to do. And one of them said, Mr. Nesloni, I didn't want to tell you this, but I really hate being the tutor all the time. Like, I know I get it really quickly, but I feel like you put so much pressure on me to relay my knowledge but I'm not getting anything out of it. Like, I'm
Right.
still not being challenged. And exactly what you said, Christy, is what I started doing is going above to grade levels above and saying, how would I push this? How do I, like, I taught fifth grade maths, and it was like, I
Right.
don't know how to go past this. Like, this is about my limit. And they would say, okay, here's some ways you can challenge their thinking without taking them 3 grade levels above and confusing the heck out of them. Ask them to do this, or ask them to write it out this way. And sometimes it was even you know what, if you know this content so well, create me some instructional videos. And I want
Exactly.
to see how, and those kind of things are things that I think sometimes we forget about when we have those higher achieving kids. So I love that you brought that up. And so, let's go the other end of the spectrum. We've
Mhm.
got kids, like you said, we always have students who are in our classroom that aren't performing on grade level, whether
Okay.
that is due to poor instruction they've had from previous teachers, or that's just due to struggles. Some struggles that we know, and some struggles that we're still trying to figure out as a teacher. So where do we even begin with reaching those needs of those students?
So again, I definitely recommend you can't be afraid to jump outside of, well, this is what I'm supposed to teach this year, period. Because that's an easy box to get stuck in. Um, and just like when we were talking about the hires that you might not know, the higher content, it's very possible you don't know the lower content. I teach reading. And I remember when I signed up to be a teacher and I switched over to elementary education, and I love reading. I'm very passionate about it. But I told my mom, I said, I will never, ever, ever, ever teach kinder or first grade reading, because I don't know anything about how to teach a kid to read. I know what to do once they know how to read. I can work with that, but I will not teach them how to read. And now I'm in junior high, where I never thought that I would be teaching phonics. Goodness gracious.
Yep.
And I'm finding myself needing to teach phonics. And I actually reached out to a first grade teacher the other day, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to hit you up for how to do some of this, because I just don't know. And I think having the humbling moment of, you know what, this is my classroom, and it is okay that I don't know everything and
Yeah.
that I might need some help. Because when you can accept that and you can take on that, then it's a huge relief. Your students get to see that. Like, I've been honest with my kids, you know what? I really don't have the answer right now. Let me get back with you. And then, they get to see that too, because I've seen a lot of kids that, when they feel challenged and they can't do it, one, they're not going to speak up about it because they're afraid. They will just sit there until, like, just let me sit here long enough and it will go away. And then when you start to be vulnerable as their teacher and they see that you don't got all the answers either, then they see that it's okay, and it's okay to seek out that help. And I really just recommend that as well. For you've got to be comfortable going out of your comfort zone. And then when you do find out that you have that kid that's significantly lower than what you're used to teaching, you have to be willing to go and say, okay, like, I have 2 choices at that point. And really, again, this will work for your hires as well. You have 2 choices at that point. You can let them sit in your classroom all year, and you can just be like, all right, we're going to survive this year. I don't know that it's going to be great. I'm going to tolerate it. You're going to somehow get through. And then, you know what? Next year, you're not my problem.
Mm.
Or you can sit there and say, you know what? I recognize we have a need here. And I know that this is going to be hard. But if you're willing to work with me, then I'm willing to work with you. And we're going to get better at this thing together. And then you start taking it on yourself and taking it on with the student to really look at what are their needs and where do they need to go and what are they missing, and how can you fill in that gap.
Well, I love what you said there a second ago about, we have to understand that we don't know all the answers, and that's okay. But we have to get to a point where we're okay with that. Because I know for me, my first or second year teaching, I did not like saying I didn't know how to do something. And just like you said, like, I remember when I love reading. I'm like, I could totally teach reading. And then when I became a principal and started learning how the ways that kindergarten, first grade, second grade teachers are teaching reading, I was like, I had no idea that all of this went into it. In my head, I was like, I'll just teach them how to sound out a word and we'll be good to go and we can read. And it's like, there's so many layers that I had to get comfortable saying, I have no idea. Like, who can we ask? What resources are available? What training can I go to? Like, those things I had to get comfortable with. And so, you know, Christy, though, I know there are going to be people who are listening today who are going to say, you know, Christy and Todd, I agree. I agree we got to reach those higher achieving kids. I agree we got to figure out ways to reach those kids who come below level. But I have too much on my plate already just trying to teach the standards I have this year. So where do they even begin? How do they balance that where they feel like they're not going to get screamed at by their admin because they didn't teach the right standards, but they're also giving the kids what they need where they are?
Great question. I don't have a perfect answer. I have this is what I do.
Yeah.
So first I would say, again, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. The second that you decide to really meet these kids where you are, there's probably going to be a lot of uncomfortable conversations. I have had to defend myself until I'm blue in the face sometimes with, this is what I'm doing. And you might not agree with me, but I'm going to do this because I know that that's what's right for the kid. And then voila, the kid miraculously shows growth because I believe in him. And, you know, we get them where they need to be. And it's like, told you, without saying that, because, you know, I won't be rude about it. But honestly, I would say that you could start with having, you know, what you're expected to teach. I'm not by any means saying don't teach your grade level material, because we all know that will get you in trouble.
Yes.
You are expected to teach that, obviously. I like to have a whole group instruction. So there's a general lesson that all of my students will complete and be expected to do, whether they're at that level or they need a lot of support, or they, you know, they do it in 5 seconds and it's perfect. We're good. So I do have that generic lesson. And then one point of controversy with me, with people who come in and watch me, it's like, I already have this pre-recorded and they're going to do it on, you know, an Edpuzzle or whatever, because they're going to get the instruction. It doesn't matter how they got it. They got it. It's on the video. I taught it. And then I like to have small groups. To me, the time of being able to pull my kids one-on-one, no matter what level they're at, is invaluable to me. And I'm like, yeah, if you come in my classroom, I'm not in front of you, you know, talking to you, because I remember where I was as a student, and I was one of the higher ones. And my teachers honestly were boring. And I was like, oh my God, I could teach this class. Just please stop. And I remember that. And I try to think of myself as a student and what would I have wanted. And I kind of cater my instruction that way. And what I found just for me as a teacher is just getting that one-on-one time. One, I get to hear the kids' thoughts, because if they're just sitting out there in the class, I'm not hearing them talk back to me. And I also am like this little introvert too. I don't like to talk out to people. So I will sit there with my thoughts and privately email you later, hey, by the way. And I know my kids do that. So getting to pull them in with me in groups of like 1 or 2 where they're comfortable, where they're talking, I'm suddenly getting to see inside, like, you know, here's what we're thinking. And I get a better picture of like, where exactly are you? What can you do? I remember this year when I really started hitting the phonics instruction in middle school, which was brand new for me. It amazed me when I had some students who couldn't even write like the alphabet. And I'm like, oh, okay, because that is something that I just assumed we could do. And I'm like, I'm telling the dyslexia teacher, did you know they can't write the alphabet? And she's like, I was like, oh, okay, well, I didn't know this. And, you know, so even just little things like that, and watching them, you know, and it's amazing what you will get when you just really start to pull them back and like breaking down your content and finding out how much do I really need to scaffold them. Same thing goes with like listening to them read out loud, which personally, I will never have them read out loud in front of the class for various reasons. Right. So when I have them come to me and I ask them, hey, you're just going to read to me, like that amazed me as well. Just hearing how they read it, and it was like, oh, no wonder this isn't making sense to you. Like, so getting to just break it into small groups, I think, and whether that's, okay, I'm going to do small groups, but we're still doing the main lesson and just kind of some extensions, I think it's going to give you valuable insight. I like to write down notes on paper because whatever, I'm old school, and I'll write down notes in my little notebook, and I have a page for every kid, and then every day I write that. So then, because I'm also scatterbrained and I know I'll forget before I see them the next time, I can read, here's what we did, here's what we talked about, here's something cool I noticed, and then I just build on that. And I can't say that it's perfect. I can't say that it's easy. I've noticed with my intern that I have this semester, we started doing writing conferences, and I'll be honest, like I told my department head, I'm like, I don't like teaching writing. It's very subjective. I don't do well with, well, this is good because, and this is not good. I'm like, yeah, it's not I can't do that. I don't like judging. But I challenged myself. I was like, we're going to do this small group writing. And I was like, I'm going to force myself to do it. Dang it. And we're going to do it and we'll see what happens. And so I gave them an easy journal prompt that I could live with and they could live with. And I started calling them. I'm like, let's look at this. And I have no idea what they're going to come up with. And I have no idea what I'm going to end up talking with them about. It's just like, all right, let's see what you got. And so I actually end up having 10 different mini lessons going on by the time I work with these kids that I had no clue at the beginning of the day. Okay, I'm going to work with student A on, this and student B on this because I don't know. And then, and they don't know, but it becomes very authentic and meaningful to them because, hey, this is what I've got to bring you right now. And then how can you, as my teacher, help me get to where you want me to be? And they really seem to respect that. They seem to respond to it. I've seen a lot of my students that are like, they're weirded out at first because I kind of do this self-paced thing that is like, I don't care what you work on. You're going to get to the end goal at the end of the day. If we get there, we're good. And they're like, really? And I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Come on. And now they're like, okay, cool. And some of them will open it up and start doing it before because they just know the routine and it's chill like that. But it is something that I've seen a lot of value in.
Well, there's a couple things you said there, though, that I think really resonated with me. And one is that as teachers, we can't have that assumption that just because they came into our class, they come with all the prerequisite skills. We really have to spend that time. And, that was a hard lesson for me to learn. I was an in the front of the room teacher, and we're going to have these whole group lessons. Then you're going to have independent practice and I'm going to grade it. And when I started moving away from that and having some some whole group instruction, but also small group and I learned so much. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you got that question wrong, not because you didn't know what you were doing, because you keep making this one mistake every time you do it. I can fix that. That's so easy than just having you redo the same worksheet over and over again. And that was huge for me. But the other thing I really love that I heard you say was when it comes to the idea of, how do I reach these kids? I don't know, or I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble. Just having that conversation with your administrator, just being able to say, you know what, here's an idea. I'd like to try it. Because that's what I did with my administrator is I went to her and I said, I have this idea. Can you give me 1 6 weeks period to try this out and prove that these kids can succeed using this method? If it doesn't work, I'll stop doing it and I'll fix it all. I promise. But let me try this. And when I brought the research and I brought my reasoning and showed how I could make the kids improve and how I was going to track it, my principal said, you have 6 weeks. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, she said, you have the rest of the year. I trust you. And I'm like, I was too afraid to ask sometimes. And so I'd love to know, though, how has COVID and protocols and masks and spacing and some kids virtually, how has that changed the way you're working to reach all your kids?
It's challenging. It's definitely challenging. I will still say that at the end of the day, if I have a student who is willing to put in the effort, whether that's I'm willing to log on and meet with you, one-on-one right now, or I'm going to show up in your class and when you call me to work with you, we're going to do that. If that child shows any willingness to work with me, then I will absolutely wholeheartedly give them 100% of everything that I have available to give them. And it has its challenges.
Yeah,
definitely. Virtual is hard.
Yeah.
Virtual is just very
And I
difficult.
think anybody listening or watching will completely agree with that none of us signed up to be these virtual teachers or these hybrid teachers or this back and forth constantly teachers. And so, I think the biggest thing people can keep in mind is just show up and do the best you can, because everybody is in survival mode, including your students. And so that's part of reaching them where they are too, knowing that this year isn't like a normal year. They're emotionally spent, just like you are emotionally spent. So, Christy, as we close this conversation out today, let's leave everybody with some words of wisdom, some parting thoughts, ideas, how you feel. I mean, our conversation today is about reaching them where they are. So close us out with some words of wisdom.
Be willing to try. Be willing to fail. Be honest with yourself. If something doesn't work, give it a couple of times, because the first time always is, interesting. So don't just brush it off if like, oh no, this didn't work, so I'm never going to do it. Reflection is a huge part of teaching. Being honest with yourself, what worked, what didn't, what did you like about it? What did you not like about it? And then I can't emphasize it enough, just being comfortable enough to accept the uncomfortable, accept what, when you decide I'm in this, be in it. Yeah. I'm going to do this until I figure out how it's going to work, and it's going to be messy, but I'm going to get there. I'm a 13-year teacher. I have never done the same thing twice, 2 years in a row, ever. I'm still looking at it. I'm still getting better. I know with my intern, I'm like, oh, I just learned how to do this the other day. And sorry, I didn't tell you, but I just learned how to do it. And, and just accepting that, the kids see it. And I do want to say, though, if you're willing to try this, you're going to see their level of confidence skyrocket.
Yeah.
And that's something that it is an uncomfortable conversation, especially if you're like working with some of your lower kids, not as much with your higher kids, because everybody's like, cool, make them go further. That's awesome. But definitely if you're trying to go the below grade level, it is an uncomfortable conversation that you may have to have. But when you start to see that kid, hey, I'm going to meet you right here. We can't do this yet. We're going to get you here, but we're going to start you right here where you're at. And seeing that confidence, it's priceless. It's amazing. It makes every ounce of struggle that you and the student have ever had worth it. It gives you like this teacher high for so many days. It's amazing. I actually had a student this year, and all of last year and up to this year, we were struggling to just get a second grade passage done. And it was difficult. And I'm like, you're reading a level 2. We want to get you to like a level 6, a level 7. We can do this, but right now you're a 2. She wasn't happy with it. So, we started working. I taught her strategies. We worked on so many second level passages. Like it just, oh my goodness. And frustrating. And what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And then one day she came in and she's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to show you, miss. And then all of a sudden, like, she's like, look, it says this right here. I can show you. And then all of a sudden they're all right. And I'm like, ooh, let's do this on the next level. And I give her a 3 and she's doing a 3. And I'm like, oh my God, you just like totally did a 3 and it's right. And she's like, okay. I'm like, let's do a 4. Let's see what we got here, And then she actually went all the way up to a level 5 that day, then told me, miss, this level 5 is easier than the level 2 you gave me. And I said, sweetheart, it's not that the 5 is easy. And if I gave you a 2 right now, you'd be really insulted that I'm giving you something so easy. It's that you put in the time, you put in the effort, and you got the confidence. And now you know what to do, and those kind of moments are priceless. I can't tell you how long or how quick it's going to be. But the kid, no matter where they're at, if you meet them and show them, hey, I'm going to work with you. I like you just where you're at. We can get you where we need to be. But right now, I'm right where you're at. We're going to work with this. They're going to work with you. They're going to give you their everything. And it's going to be amazing when you get to those results. So just be willing to try, even if it's just one kid, start small.
Well, and it's exactly what you said. Building that confidence up is the key. That's where the game changer happens, and that's where you see even more growth.
Exactly.
Anything else you could do. So, Christy, I have so enjoyed this conversation about reaching kids where they are. I'm thankful that you were able to come on and talk with me tonight. And I want to thank everybody for listening or watching another episode. Remember, you can join every Thursday night live at 8 p.m. Central, or check out the recording on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube. See you all next week.